As Riley brought the car to a halt outside the station on Park Street, Gardner jumped out and glanced around with a feeling of déjà vu, rather like Bill Murray in the film Groundhog Day. Despite an early start, the sky was blue and cloudless. A slight chill enveloped his shoulders, but it was nothing he couldn't cope with. The little town remained unchanged. The shops opposite the station were closed, with few of the residents having surfaced. Giles Middleton stood on the station steps, pointing an umbrella at them and gesticulating, no doubt cursing and wishing them in hell. As they approached the entrance, Gardner noticed a man pushing letters into the small postbox on the wall despite the activity. Middleton was quickly upon them. He wore the same attire as the previous day, a black suit with a white shirt and black tie. He also wore a bowler hat like a city gent. "What the bloody hell is going on around here?" He spoke slowly and through gritted teeth. "Like you, Mr. Middleton, I have absolutely no idea." Gardner continued walking as he was talking, trying to show Middleton that he neither had the time nor the patience for his pomposity. "I'd like some answers to my questions, young man." "So would I," replied the SIO, "and at this moment, mine are more important than yours." Gardner pointed to the station entrance. "You see that rope there?" Such was his annoyance at the intrusive little man, he spoke very slowly, a trait he'd had all his life. Shouting the odds was not his style. When Gardner became really upset, he would talk very slowly and with care, so that he made sure you understood every one of his words. "That means no one but my sergeant and I are allowed beyond that point. You stay at the bottom of the steps and you do not come into the station. Do we understand?" Middleton pointed again. "Now you look here." "Do you understand?" repeated Gardner. Middleton opened his mouth. "Say one more word and I'll arrest you for causing an obstruction." Gardner turned and met the head of Pulsar, Graham Nash, at the top of the station steps. "Graham, what do you have for me?" "Female, mid to late 20s. "Female," repeated Gardner. "Any identification?" His heart sank. He could only think that they had finally met Sonia Knight. "No," replied Nash. "Where is she?" "The waiting room. We arrived here about 30 minutes ago, had a brief meeting about what we'd covered yesterday, when one of the officers noticed the door to the waiting room open." "Just a minute," said Riley. "You lot did a fingertip search yesterday and cleared the area, and then overnight we have a body in there. What does that say?" "Either he's one of us," replied Gardner, "or he's working with one of us. Or he's got some nerve." Gardner addressed Graham Nash. "Is she conscious?" "Yeah, she's conscious, but I get the feeling she'd rather not be." "Why?" "You need to see for yourself." Eager to stop wasting time, Gardner and Riley followed Nash onto the platform. Before turning left to the waiting room, Gardner glanced to his right along the tracks. He wasn't sure what he expected to see, but everything appeared normal. But it wasn't, was it? The members of the Pulsar team were standing outside the waiting room. As if to back up their position, Nash told them that no one had been inside. The door was open and Gardner glanced beyond. It no longer smelled of fresh lavender polish, but urine and fear. The table and 4 chairs had been removed. The coal scuttle and the freshly cut logs remained. The walls were completely bare, the framed paintings, photos of old steam locomotives and the film posters no longer present. Someone had taken time to prepare the scene well, which led him back to the question of who was responsible. Had he been subject to inside information? Was one of the officers at Bramfield Police Station bearing a grudge? The girl was naked, sitting in a chair. Her arms were on the armrests, her legs intertwined with the chairs. As Gardner could not see any restraints, he quickly came to the conclusion that she had somehow been bonded to the frame so she couldn't move. The chair was high-backed, like those found in most dining rooms, only taller. A plain white envelope was pinned to each wing. Closer scrutiny revealed the female was completely hairless, a head between her legs, even under her arms, from what he could tell. Her lips had also been sewn together, like Alex Wilson's. "Is this how you found her?" he asked Nash. "Exactly. Obviously she can't speak, but I have the feeling she hasn't been conscious very long." A mild odour of antiseptic lingered, supporting the Polter team leader's statement. Have you tried to speak to her? Only a couple of questions that she could have nodded to or shook her head, but she hasn't communicated at all. Gardner and Riley quickly suited and booted and stepped gingerly into the room. The girl's complexion was ash grey, and her body indicated she had missed a few meals. She was lean and fragile. As he slowly walked towards her, she opened her eyes so wide that he thought they were going to fall out. Her body started to shake, giving proof to the means by which she had been held in place. She had been glued to the chair. Gardner had never in all his life seen someone so frightened. He couldn't begin to imagine what kind of an ordeal she had suffered. Apart from the stitching to the lips, he could see no further scarring, which he hoped was a good sign. The girl tried to move from the chair, but it was impossible. The chair scraped along the floor as she retreated a couple of inches. Gardner sensed that she was trying to move away from him. As he drew closer, he noticed the female jerk her head ever so slightly down towards the floor. "I want you to do something for me," said Gardner. "If you can't move, please blink your eyes once." The girl calmed a little and blinked to indicate that was the case. Gardner had the impression that with hair and makeup, she would be very pretty. "Is your name Sonia Knight?" She blinked once. She then tried to move her head again, blinking furiously as she did. "Something's rattling there, boss," said Riley. The Irishman leaned further forward and Sonia Knight pushed away with her feet so hard the chair nearly went over. Riley grabbed the leg to prevent that from happening. Knight was growing extremely agitated. Gardner associated her expression with someone who had been told what was going to happen, which left her in the unenviable position of being able to do absolutely nothing to prevent it due to her condition. Sonia opened her eyes as wide as she could and angled them down as far as they would go, glaring down at her side. Gardner slowly stepped around the chair. Strapped to the chair was a mobile phone. At precisely that second it rang, and all hell let loose. Sonia Knight jumped as hard as her situation would allow, the chair leaving the floor by at least 6 inches. Even though her lips were sewn together, she let loose a spine-tingling mew. Gardner sensed that if it had been at all possible, she would have screamed loud enough to wake the dead. He stepped back very quickly. The phone rang again, and Sonia Knight frantically tried to part company with the wooden frame. She must have succeeded in some way, because Gardner heard a tearing sound, and the skin on her arms gave a little. He glanced down, noticing how far it had actually stretched despite the fact that it was still connected to the chair. A bloodstain marked the area. Sonia Knight was lathered in sweat, her body shaking violently. "Sean, call an ambulance. If we don't do something soon, this is going to be fatal." Gardner reached out for the phone and Sonia Knight flinched, struggling to keep out of his way. He put his hands up in surrender. "It's okay. Please, try to keep still. I'm not going to hurt you." As soon as Riley called the emergency services, the phone strapped to the chair chimed again. It rang only once, but that was enough. Sonia convulsed, and with a stomach-churning, ripping sound, she managed to free her limbs. Splashes of blood landed across the floor and spattered both officers. The chair shook so hard it left the floor a number of times, but no matter how hard she tried, she could not remove herself completely. Sonia brought her hands to her mouth with arms that were torn red raw, her fingers trying to work at the stitches binding her lips. Gardner reached out to stop her, to try and calm her and keep her from hurting herself further. As he restrained her, a picture entered his mind of the man they had seen when they arrived. Sean, the man outside posting letters. Go and see if he's still around. Take the car if you have to, but find him. Riley left without question. They had worked together for so long that when Gardner asked him to do something, even in a situation so intense, he did it without question. He knew his superior would have a good reason. Gardner reached down and grabbed the mobile attached to the chair, but it didn't move. It was held in place by a fancy round bracket that covered all of the buttons, which in turn was held in place by 2 screws drilled into the wood. He called out to Graham Nash, "Do your lads have any tools with them? I need a screwdriver." Nash spoke to his men, and the pair of them ran for the parking lot. "What the hell is going on?" asked Nash. "We need to get the phone away from the girl." "Why?" "No time to explain. Just trust me." Gardner wondered where the ambulance was. How had things gone so wrong so quickly? How had someone been able to access a station that had been a secure crime scene and have the time to carry out a task of such magnitude? He noticed Sonia Knight was shivering. It had to be shock, because he doubted she was cold. He grabbed his jacket, intending to cover her for what use it would be. The phone rang again, and kept ringing. Knight hit the roof. The pain barrier must have been indescribable. She jerked hard against the chair. He heard another ripping sound, and one of her legs came free. The wound so severe he could see bone. More blood and further muffled screams invaded the enclosed space. Even with her mouth sealed, the girl was capable of a sound so guttural it had to have emanated from deep within her bowels. Knight put her hands to her mouth, then her head, and her ears. The poor girl seemed to have no idea what she wanted to do. She stood up on her one free leg and tried to shake the chair free. Still the phone kept ringing, accompanied now by a siren outside, closing in on the small country railway station. Some of the Pulsar team suited up and entered the building, in an effort to try and restrain Knight. She proved to be a real handful, as if in some bizarre, surreal parody of a dance with them. One of them approached with the screwdriver Gardner had asked for. Knight quickly lashed out and caught him square on the jaw, sending him back towards the waiting room door. The screwdriver fell out of his hand and rolled towards Gardner. Still the phone kept on ringing, and Knight continued screaming behind the stitches, skipping all around the room, trying to put distance between her and the chair, no matter what the circumstances or the pain. A paramedic appeared in the doorway, the expression on his face one of complete disbelief. As the phone rung on, Gardner suddenly realised it must have been tampered with, so it would continue to do so without diverting to the messaging system. That meant if she was in the same situation as Wilson had been, it would continue to create the most unbearable pain for her. He had to stop it ringing. Suddenly, Knight released herself from her prison. She had literally torn free of the chair, which fell to the floor with a clatter. She turned her back to them. Her body glistened with blood and raw muscle, resembling a freshly skinned carcass hanging in the butcher's window. Gardner noticed that the mobile phone had abruptly stopped ringing during the confusion. But no sooner had that thought entered his head when it started again. Sonia Knight turned back around and fell to her knees with her arms in the air, her hands clenched in fists. A screech of agony was heard in full, her pain so great she had torn her mouth completely open. Gardner couldn't tell which was her bottom lip and which was her top. But it was the view inside her mouth that would be the stuff of his nightmares for a very long time to come.